Matt Brown had put together a very good team. For his set production, he had used Luciana Arrighi, who has, if you've seen the movie Howard's End, she won the Academy Award for it. And one of the beauties of this movie is it was a team effort, putting together an outstanding team of veterans as well as people who, each department would do their research and come back. I went to Cambridge on 2 occasions when different people in the production team who I didn't even know they'd set up meetings, and Anne Masqueray, who was doing the costumes, came and said, okay, this is the studio, we've got all these pictures up, this is what they used to wear. So certain times I would say, yes, but this is not South India, this is Odisha, this is the Mahari tradition, this is Tamil Nadu. So again, the detailing that went into explaining Tamilian Brahmin Iyengar, it is very different, even the Iyengars from the Iyers, how the sari is worn. So, even though the research team is doing, I was there, I explained it to them. When we were doing costume or buying of jewelry, I said, you don't need to. I have all this Bharatanatyam South Indian jewelry, the temple jewelry that was worn even way back then. So, showed them, the jhumkas and the bangles. So just took it with me to Cambridge, and so they photographed everything, researched it, what was the kind of hair she would be wearing, the simple braid, and the girl Janki, who was married to Ramanujan, what she would wear, what the mother, who's played by Arundhati Nag, who's an outstanding theatre and film personality in India. So she was playing the mother, and so the entire group, I think, who had come together for the film was very research oriented, and the director spoke with each one, asking and checking facts back and forth. So Luciana created the Cambridge sets. She had the help of a local team I know who has worked with Mani Ratnam's films, because I met them on the sets. So they created Kumbhakonam and Pondicherry. We had used some of the temples, where Ramanujan, played by Dev Patel, where he goes into the temple and writes his mathematical formulas with chalk, and where Janaki, played by Devika, runs in and remembers him and says, this is who I married, but how do I get to know who is the man I married? Because he left soon after for Cambridge for his Trinity for his further studies. So both these sets, I would say that they were the authenticity of it was a lot of research, photographs, talking to people like me, and detailing. Sometimes I know in film people are allowed to take liberties as it's a story, it's cinematography, it's beauty. And so sometimes, you have 2 sides. One says, well, this looks beautiful, but then another side, somebody like me who's, trying to keep true to the art, as in the culture, which is very, very important, where I would say a Tamilian Brahmin woman would never do this, and this just cannot be done, and they would not have this, and they would, so it was a good back and forth, and that's how we came up with the research. Well, I'd say creative liberty is, Ramanujan was kind of short and stocky, and Dev Patel is tall and lanky. I would say, I would say that kind of creative liberty, but the essence of the film is very much about explaining and getting people to understand that who is this awkward young man who had a passion, who was a genius, who didn't have not just money but the know-how to go in 1913 to Trinity, to Cambridge. I mean, where's the path? Where's the research? And so it's a beautiful story about him living with his young wife who is married, his awkwardness, his desire to spend time discovering more theorems and formulas, having a mentor like Thomas Hardy, played by none other than the great Jeremy Irons, and having Jeremy Irons playing Hardy as his mentor, writing to him, bringing him to Trinity, the challenges of Trinity, living in Cambridge in 1913 with the World War going to break out, a vegetarian. Not just a vegetarian, a Tamilian Brahmin Iyengar vegetarian. It's not like saying, well, let's turn vegan today and let's be veggie and let's have the... What was his access to food? He had not been someone, the tradition didn't allow him to be cooking, his mother cooked. He ate certain, there's sambar, there's rasam, there's, there's taira, so you're having yogurt, you're having rice. You're suddenly transported and your food changes. You're sitting dressed in Oxford shirts at Trinity for the passion of mathematics to allow the world to see it. And along with that, he had malnutrition and eventually, he dies a year after he returns. But all of this is the passion of his mathematics and genius. Nothing else mattered to him. And he had a mentor like Thomas Hardy. And the relationship between the two is fully explored in the movie as the focal point. The initial aspects discuss his relationship with his mother, with his wife. And I think each of them make the movie because though the focus is on the two men, it's not an exclusive relationship. Who was Ramanujan? You will never know if you didn't know his mother. Who was he when he's feeling homesick? Homesick for Janaki and thinking of her. So he had the same trials and tribulations of most people who are separated, and yet the magic of the numbers. Who told him? He didn't know why he knew these formulas. He just would say the goddess told him. So his home background is important because he grew up believing in the goddess Namagiri. She wrote it on his tongue, she wrote it in his mind, and his mother was his mentor and guide, after which he left his wife behind and she also said, no, you must go and do what you have to do. Whether she, people will wonder, oh, did she really say that? Did she not? I think she would have had to, otherwise, there would be a lot of tug and war because he's a young man who was just married, and she, even when he comes back, feels that he has achieved so much in a young life by 32. And she died, I believe, by the age of 84, just a few years ago, and continued, his statue was put up, I know, in her, outside her home, but she was teaching school children. So she continued, though she herself was illiterate, she thought it very important that young children must be nurtured and taking care of intellectual stimulation and curiosity of the young mind. And she died a very old woman. Dev Patel spent time obviously with the director and with different people who he was researching with, and voice coaches, and Jeremy Irons himself, researched and talked about how he should be portraying it, what they should do. They all spent time with each other, interacting. The actors spent time getting comfortable, knowing each other. They went to the sets of Cambridge, met everybody, talked to everybody. Devika, who played Janaki, obviously being herself a trained Bharatanatyam dancer, you're not dancing in the film. But as an American girl, she didn't need to, as Arundhati said, didn't need to wonder how to walk in a Madisar sari, how do you run in a Madisar sari, or to be kind of awkward, standing, how you, a lot of things are culturally natural, how women who wear saris or people who wear trousers. And a lot of that, I think, when you study Indian classical arts, that aspect comes deep within you. So she just spent time talking to Matt Brown, what he wanted Janaki to be, or researched herself who was Janaki. Was she passive? Was she seen as passive? What did she achieve in her later life? And if she achieved all of this, she couldn't have been very passive. Who was this young girl who everybody says was, a child bride? She got married very young, and then, her husband left. She never married again, and she used to stitch clothes to make ends meet. So this is a fighter, and this is someone who did many different things after her husband died. So I think each of these actors delved into the character. And for mathematics, I know that they used the help of researchers. Ken Ono, who has also written a book himself on Ramanujan, Ken himself had received a letter from Janaki, the original, the wife of Ramanujan, and he shared that with Devika, as in, this was the last letter I got before she died, because he was doing a research on Ramanujan and his mathematical formulas, and they've also had with the film Manjul Bhargav, who himself in 1905 won a Ramanujan mathematical award, and has recently last year won the Padma Bhushan, the first Indian origin person who has won the award for mathematics, and is a professor at Princeton. So Ken and Manjul were closely associated with the mathematical formulas of writing, and what was, the black hole theory, or the mathematics angle. It's not just writing. Someone watching who is a mathematician, I'm not, would be able to say, wow, that's exactly, studying the quantum theory. What were what were the mathematical formulas they wrote on the blackboard? So Ken and Manjul were the mathematicians who were very involved with working with Matt Brown on this.